Oh boy, it's the one the media prayed you never asked about. Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline, the White House cover-up, and how CNN's Jake Tapper, of all people, is suddenly grown to conscience. If it weren't for that absolute disastrous debate performance, this whole thing would still be swept under the rug. Welcome to Nelly Miranda. If you're new here, go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss another episode where we unpack the political circus with a little bit of common sense.
And judging by what we're seeing now from the Alex Thompson, Jake Tapper book, and we'll talk about the co-authors in a second, this is even worse than I thought.
Yeah, here's a quote from the book. For months, we didn't have access to him, talking about Joe Biden. There was clearly a deliberate strategy by the White House to have him meet with as few people as necessary.
Since early 2022, the signs were everywhere. Confused speeches, slurred words, forgetting names, and long, awkward silences like he was buffering in real time. This wasn't a hiccup here and there. This was consistent, and it was alarming. He'd walk off stage in the wrong direction, freeze up mid-sentence, mix up countries, policies, people, you name it.
So the White House physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, was telling White House aides that President Biden's deterioration of his spine, the degeneration, was so significant that if he fell one more time, that he might have to be in a wheelchair and serve in a wheelchair for his second term. But everybody pushed off the notion that he use a wheelchair until after the election. This is all part of a larger whole where the Biden White House tried to hide the extent of his deterioration, both physical and cognitive, as much as possible. In fact, as we all saw, as his shuffling gait got worse and worse from 2003 to 2004, they started putting aides around him as he walked to Marine One, the helicopter. That was to kind of hide from public view how bad his gait was, how bad his walking was, his shuffling, and also in case he stumbled again to make sure somebody was there. And this is just of a piece of an overall campaign to try to conceal from the American people the extent to which the president was really struggling to do his job.
And yet, radio silence from the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, and even networks that claim to speak truth to power. They all suddenly forgot how to investigate. Instead, they gaslit the entire country. Oh, he has a stutter. He's just an old-fashioned man. He's sharp as ever behind closed doors. Sure. And I'm Helen Keller. They don't want you to believe your own eyes or your own ears. The White House began limiting his press availability. Carefully scripted appearances, pre-approved reporters, flashcards, yes, flashcards, for the leader of the free world. When Biden did appear publicly, it was usually a short walk from the teleprompter to the exit. No questions, no accountability. And when he fumbled, they rushed in to cover for him again and again.
I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024. And we spoke with more than 200 people, most of whom, almost all of whom, were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
Let's call it what it is. It's elder abuse. This wasn't just a political spin. This was a concerted effort to parade a clearly declining man across the world stage, all for the sake of power. The Democratic Party, his campaign team, even members of his own family, they knew. Jill knew. And they let it happen anyway? They propped him up, polished the optics, and sold the country a narrative that simply wasn't true. Think about that for a moment. What kind of people knowingly send someone who can barely string a sentence together to negotiate with world leaders? This wasn't compassion. It was manipulation. It was cruel, calculated, and frankly dangerous. And then the debate. Oh boy, no spin, no teleprompter, no cleanup crew, just Biden. And 90 minutes of live TV that will go down as one of the most painful public unravelings in political history.
I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. It's better than when he left office. And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country.
That $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Poor man, he mumbled, he froze, he looked lost. He forgot what he was saying mid-sentence, repeatedly. Even the CNN moderators looked uncomfortable. Hell, I was at home uncomfortable. It was the moment the dam broke. Suddenly, even the diehard supporters couldn't deny it anymore. The internet exploded. Polls shifted overnight. Democratic insiders panicked. And the media, the same outlets who shielded him for years, were suddenly concerned. Jake Tapper, yes, that Jake Tapper started asking questions. Jake Tapper is suddenly sounding the alarm on Joe Biden's cognitive decline, as if it's breaking news. Most of us have been watching this unfold in plain sight for years. The slurred speech, the confusion, is not new. What's new is that now it's profitable to talk about it. Tapper and other media figures who once ignored or covered for Biden are now trying to rebrand themselves. But this feels less like courageous journalism and more like opportunism. The only reason they're speaking up now is because the public can't unsee what happened during the debate. As for me, I'm going to buy the book to confirm what we already knew. So after Biden's speechless debate, literally, because he said nothing up there, the damage control was in full swing. Should Biden step down? Is he fit for a second term? Who's really running the country? Who's really running the show? You all knew Biden wasn't fit for the first term. Never mind the second one. Look, it's not even just about Biden anymore. It's about the entire apparatus that enabled the charade. They didn't protect the country. They protected themselves. And they'll do it again and again unless people speak up, ask questions, and vote accordingly. What we witnessed with Biden's presidency wasn't just political theater. It was a betrayal of public trust on a scale that should make every American, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, furious. Do you think the media was complicit in hiding Biden's condition? Let me know in the comments. And if honest commentary bring you value, make sure you like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.